Hi, everyone. Hi. Um, Hello, I'm Belle. Thank you all for coming out here tonight. I'm on the events team here at Books Are Magic. So we are so excited to celebrate this book with Andrew and Sochi tonight with us to celebrate. Oh, God, my script is so off. Sorry. We are so excited to celebrate with Andrew and Xochitl tonight this incredible debut novel, Victim. But before we get started, I wanted to point out some logistics for how tonight's event is going to go. If you need to use a restroom at any point, the door is located right next to the moleskin spinner right here. We'll be doing hand-raised Q&A towards the end of the discussion, and so start thinking of questions to ask and hold on to them tight. After the talk tonight, Andrew will be signing and personalizing books at the table next to where you checked in. We'll let everyone know where and when to line up for that. And if you're joining us virtually on the YouTube live stream, we'd love to encourage you to buy a copy of Victim online using the link in the live stream description. So we love this book, Victim, so much here at Books Are Magic, and as the New York Times says, this novel signals the arrival of a writer courageous enough to dive into the difficult head-on. Victim is a thrilling work that requires a sense of openness and surrender. Not only does this novel place the onus on us to decide whether Hobby is a victim, a victimizer, or both, it also forces us to interrogate our own complicity in the commodification of being a casualty. So that's, if that doesn't make you want to buy this book, I don't know what will. Please go buy it after this. So Andrew Boryga grew up in the Bronx and now lives in Miami with his family. His writing has appeared in the New York Times, the New Yorker, and the Atlantic, and he has been awarded prizes by Cornell University, the University of Miami, and the Missioner Foundation. He attended the Tin House Writers Workshop and has taught writing to college students, elementary school students, and incarcerated adults. Victim is his debut novel. As I mentioned earlier, Xochitl Gonzalez joins Andrew in conversation tonight. Xochitl Gonzalez is a New York Times bestselling author of the award-winning novel Olga Dies Dreaming and a staff writer for The Atlantic, where she was a Pulitzer Prize finalist for commentary. A Reese's Book Club pick, her new novel, Anita de Monte Last, was published in March 2022 with Flatiron Books. So without any further delay, please join me in welcoming Andrew and Xochitl.
Yay! Congratulations!
Thank you. Hey. Oh my God. Wow, this is so cool.
Familiar faces?
A lot of familiar faces.
It's awesome. It's awesome. You want to read a little bit before we get started?
Yeah. First, I just want to say thank you to everybody for being here. Thank you to Xochitl for being here. Her book just came out and she has 20 dates or whatever, and you in Iowa yesterday.
Yeah.
So I'm really grateful for you being here.
I love this book so much. I loved it from page 1, and so I was so excited to get to do something with you to celebrate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we can talk about all the reasons why
I love it. To match
I
the
did.
book. Yeah,
look,
so
I said I never do a crop top for a formal event, but look at this.
She matched.
I know. I had to do it.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
I'm that's my shtick. You invite me to come and do a book event, and I'll match your cover.
No, I know. Next book, I'm gonna choose the cover wisely. So I'm gonna read a little section. Most of the book takes place in the Bronx, and some parts in Puerto Rico, but there's one section in Brooklyn, and since we're here, I figured it would be fitting. This is Javi and his girlfriend, who becomes his ex-girlfriend later. They're looking for apartments, and he's trying to convince her to live in the Bronx, and she's not really feeling that plan, so they go visit a place in Brooklyn. The apartment was deep in Brooklyn, over an hour on 3 different train lines deep. On the ride over, Anais said that if I would have let her bring her car to the city instead of convincing her to leave it in Albany, the whole trip would have been faster. I had to re-explain how much trouble having a car in New York City is, and how we would have spent more time in traffic and circling the block looking for parking than just riding the train like normal people. After our torturous journey, we ended up in a neighborhood in Brooklyn I'd never heard of before. When we got off the train, I looked up and saw a street sign that made me freeze. I didn't know shit about Brooklyn, but I remembered the names of streets and projects and blocks that had been dropped by all the rappers I grew up listening to. This street was one of them. Are you sure this is a good neighborhood? I asked. Yes, I have a couple of friends who live near here, Anais said. We passed one of Anais's signature coffee shops, then a cycling studio. But there were other things I noticed that made my ghetto senses tingle. A liquor store with thick, bulletproof glass shielding the attendant and all the bottles. A Chinese restaurant with faded pictures of food in the window. a pair of sneakers dangling from a light pole. Suddenly, though, we found ourselves in front of a gleaming new building that looked like it had been airlifted there from Soho. Inside, the lobby was white marble and well lit. A man at the front desk asked for our names and licenses, checking us in and doing his actual job. The elevator smelled like lavender, not piss. On the 8th floor, we met a real estate agent Anais had been in contact with named James. He wore a silver sport coat, fashionably tight jeans, and suede loafers. He told us the neighborhood was, quote, up and coming as he led us into the apartment. He talked up the open concept kitchen, the wraparound windows, the granite countertops, even the cabinet pulls. I admired his sales pitch. The place was nice, I won't front. It had the sort of finishes I imagined our home might have one day, the sort of luxuries that I thought maybe I even wanted. But all I could think about was how tiny and expensive it was. A box that cost double what we would pay for in the Bronx for a 1 or 2 bedroom that was basically a mansion in comparison. James knew he had Anais in the bag, but he could sense my apprehension. You have to see the rooftop garden, he said. Anais turned to me. We really must, Javi. I thought about the cheerleader in that photo in her house. Had that version of Anais ever really been extinguished? When we got to the roof of the building, there were blooming flowers, a grill, and a lounge chair, and lounge chairs. James nudged me. Nice, huh? He put his arm around my shoulders. Let me show you the best part. He led me over to the edge of the roof. I saw a beautiful view of not only Brooklyn, but the whole city. Down below it all, though, I noticed something nobody else seemed to see. The projects, the basketball court in the center, the boys standing around in strategic locations. I thought of Gio. The last time I'd heard from him was at the beginning of my senior year, after I became a columnist. The response time between letters grew longer and longer until they eventually sputtered out, and he never answered my last one. What would he say about this place, I wondered. My trance was broken. Wow, Anais said, her eyes glittering. She nearly signed the lease right then and there. I was silent as we took the train back uptown. Anais thought out loud about how she'd decorate the apartment. An L-shaped couch would work best for that corner near the kitchen, she said. Maybe a cute little coffee table with storage. I saw my plan slipping away. My cheap apartment, my easy commute to work, compromises I didn't want to make, compromises I hadn't expected to have to make given who I thought Anais was. I can't believe you liked that place, I finally said. It was gorgeous, Javi. What's not to like? But it doesn't seem to have much of a community. I thought that's what you cared about. I do, which is why I like it. It's a nice place in a working class area. She talked up the coffee shop, the renovated community center a few blocks away, a bar she read about that held poetry readings every week. What about gentrification, I asked. That building looks like it was built yesterday. Anais fidgeted. Yeah, but we're not gentrifiers. We're brown. It's complicated, but I don't know. I don't see the harm in us living in a nice place if we're not going to come and try to change things. Who was this girl, I wondered. But it's not real. It's so obviously out of place. Don't you see that? You came here saying you wanted to live in New York City and really help those in need, the ones at the bottom. I still do, Javi, she said. I'm not selling out. I just don't want to live in a place with roaches. That's all. So the Bronx isn't good enough for you, I asked? Anais sighed. I'm not saying that, Javi. The Bronx is great. I don't know. I see myself living in Brooklyn more.
I'm so glad you read that because it sets the table for one of my questions. But I want to start in a slightly different spot, which is like, just for anybody that doesn't know you or didn't get to read a little bit, basically Javi's our narrator. And very early on, he discovers that he comes from a family of hustlers, but he realizes that he could really hustle being a victim. And he really is a victim originally. And then it just sort of is like, oh, I could ride this. Yeah. Like I can ride this wave. So it's all told through his point of view. But I think I don't know, maybe this is a slightly existential question to start with, but I was wondering like how reliable you think he is, because it's meant to be kind of his confession about this kind of grand con he's run. And then I was like, it sort of becomes like a little bit of a Rashomon. I was like, but he's a writer.
Right.
What he shares in common with you is that he's a writer, right? Yeah. And it's like, and I'm like, and in some weird way, it's all manipulation, even how he decides to tell the story. So how much is he manipulating us? How reliable is he with his confession?
Yeah.
And I guess then how much are writers just manipulators?
Yeah. Well, that I love that structure because I feel like it leaves that question with the audience. It's like you're reading his memoir ostensibly, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, so you can either take what he's saying at face value, or you can wonder, is he trying to sell another story, or is he, what is he really doing here? And I personally like that ambiguity. Like that was something that I wanted to have in there.
Yeah.
And sort of like let the reader kind of decide, like,
Yeah, well, I made some decisions.
Yeah, good.
Okay, so to go back, so the book starts in Puerto Rico, okay,
Yes.
and it basically starts with a visit to Javi's dad, who's a hustler, right? And this fabulous little thing that you do where his mom is like, just go and find out if maybe he's got a little girlfriend, and then the dad's like, just go and find out if your mom, tell me, is your mom seeing somebody? They can't quit each other, right? But and then they're riding around, and he's a drug dealer, and he's like, did you always want to be a drug? He's struggling to find something in common, and he's like, no, I wanted money.
Yeah.
And then I now have money, and so in some funny way, and then tragedy befalls him and he dies. It's right in the very beginning, so I don't feel like it's a spoiler, but in some funny way, it both sets up, it feels like it ingrains in him that the ends justify the means.
Yeah.
But it's almost like he forgets consequence. How much did you anticipate it that way? How much was that by design? And then also, what was the, what was sort of the, I don't know, why in Puerto Rico versus just having his dad in the Bronx? Do you know what I mean? Why, what role did the homeland play, right?
I think I wanted to show his origins.
Yeah.
The family is Puerto Rican, but what is life in Puerto Rico for them look like versus New York City?
Yeah.
And how he's also kind of removed from that too. It allowed me to get at that as well, because that was sort of my experience. My mother was born in Puerto Rico and mostly grew up there. And then I would go in the summer, a lot of times to go stay with my grandma and other family members and stuff. And so I had this connection to it, but I was also very much like the gringo when I got there.
Right,
I didn't really speak Spanish that well. And I had a relationship with my cousins, but we couldn't really talk to each other all that well. And so I wanted to explore all of that, and also add those layers to Javi, so that instead of me just describing that as part of the book, you could actually see it and see some of his discomfort.
Yeah.
And also it was, it allowed me to paint a version of Puerto Rico that felt very familiar to me.
Yeah, which is sort of beautiful. I mean, I told a bunch of friends that I was I feel like this is going to give you the Puerto Rico but not the one that you see that much.
Yeah, it's not like San Juan. It's not
But symbolically, I felt I don't know, to grok about Puerto Rico a little bit. But I felt like it was so beautiful because just the idea, his dad is not a victim at all. He's just yeah, I wanted money
money. This is I do.
He's oh, and he's so mean. He's lose weight. He's so he's just so macho and the blah blah blah. And he's he's just kind of living his life. And I think the idea that the export of that in the mainland ends up being turned into victimization is such a was a bizarre poetic difference for the way that Boricuas on the island see life and agency, and the way that so often it's seen by the mainland, right? It was just I thought it was sort of a beautiful way to start the book, because his mom is not having any of his
No, none of the family members are. They're just like, our life isn't that bad. Our life is fine. We ride horses. We have lemon trees.
Totally.
It's sunny outside.
Exactly. It's we're listening to some music. We're going to grab some good food. It's great. And then it turns into this oh my God.
Or when it's time to get translated to a college essay.
Exactly.
Then you have to try to arrange things. Yeah.
So I wanted to talk, I want to get back to the essay, but before that, I love that Paul Beatty, who wrote one of the greatest American satires of modern time. I've read this out so many times, gave you one of your blurbs. Did you start out and say, okay, I want to do a satire, and then if so, kind of why? Or did you have the idea sort of for the concept of the story and realize that satire was sort of the only way.
Yeah. It was very much more the latter.
Yeah.
I started the story mostly as a friendship story between Gio and Javi.
Yeah.
And that was like 10 years ago when I started it, and it just kept evolving and evolving and evolving. And then the more time I spent with Javi, the more time I learned, the more I learned about him. And it's like he's kind of like manipulative. He's kind of like he wants these things, but like, you know, I was seeing these inklings, and it just was me like pushing him more and more toward his like furthest extreme.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the satire is obviously is a satire. It's called satire, but like I can't say I set out thinking like,
right,
I'm gonna write a satire. It was like I just kept pushing things to the extreme, and it just kind of like ended up there.
It's funny because like I don't think when I was writing Olga Dice Dreaming, I wasn't intending to write a satire per se, but like I was like pushing and then one of the things I wanted to ask you to that point is like you work eventually we follow Javi through high school. I love it because it passes through time so interestingly, and he keeps up this act, like this hustle for a really long time. Like he starts out, he's in high school, he goes through college, he has like a freaking career, like right, like it's like he's like getting an apartment, as you heard, and he keeps it up, right? And it's like I was thinking, one of the things that I was wondering if you had pleasure was I had been a wedding planner, and then I wrote Olga, and she's a wedding planner, and I had so much fun imagining the things that I didn't have the balls to do to my clients. I was like, I felt stupid actually. I was like you should have done that with the credit cards. Like I thought about all these ways I could have made more money, and I was like, oh my God, like were these your secret thoughts while you have been working and as a student, or did you like invent them in the moment and you're like, oh gosh, like because it's cathartic. Some of it's really cathartic.
I'm so like Javi's manipulation and all that, and his decision to like lean into things, he became at a certain point like this alternate version of me. Like I did get these opportunities to write these types of stories and stuff, and I did some of them, and then I was like, I don't know, this feels weird, and I just kind of like pulled back. Right? But I was like, what if I didn't? What if I just like leaned in all the way and was like, this is a little lane for me, and I'm gonna take this as far as I can. And so that was like Javi. That was like if I had done that, you know, he was like, he said yes to everything, and he went above and beyond making shit up, you know? So it was really fun and like interesting. And then he would have these confrontations with editors and these like power struggle dynamics that like I never actually had.
Well, I mean, it's funny because like, I don't know, there's definitely people that work in this town that I think you're a hack and you're milking this thing, and it annoys me, and it's like and it's hard to go against a grain, but it's like you get a lot, and I guess like what happens, like you know, it starts out, and it gets more complicated than this, but along the way, again and again and again, there's sort of like well-intentioned liberal white authority figures that keep kind of egging him on and enabling him until you're at the equivalent of my employer, like a version of that sort of lives somewhere Atlantic, between the Atlantic and the New Yorker, right? But I was just like, and it's like, and everybody's like, but if you just, on the one hand, everybody wants truth, but on the other hand, everybody wants the story, and it's not enough that you are just there. Because you know, it's funny because like if you think about it, his dad did die, his mom's a single mom, you know, he is like, he's living in the Bronx, his best friend's like, you know, ends up in drugs, like gets arrested, like that all, but it's not enough, like it's not enough tragedy, and so like I guess like how do you think we combat this call to perform on a constant level, you know what I mean, like, and like how do we, like, I don't know, I grapple with this all the time. Like, how do you reveal biography? Because you want your readers that have had your life to see themselves, but then not perform it.
Yeah, no, it's extremely difficult. And I think it's something that, you know, writers of color in particular, I think a lot of them struggle or just marginalize in whatever way it means. It's like, you know that it's going to be interesting and compelling, but am I sharing it to do that for like clicks or like the whatever the compelling, or am I doing it to connect? And it's like I think it's a delicate balance to try to just be authentic, and like I think for me it's like the intentions that you have when you're writing are most important. Like, am I writing this biographical detail because I know it's going to sound really compelling at the top of my story, or am I doing it because I'm like, it's actually important to the story that I'm telling? You know? And if it's not, then why am I just like, does it matter? Like I think about with politicians a lot. Like they have like if you look, my wife and I, we like when we're gonna vote, we like read all the politicians' website, and you go and it's like, my great grandmother was like a slave or something.
Oh,
like,
I know.
Like I was, and it's like really, really far removed, you know, and it's like, it's important to have that, but it's like also, like who are you now? Like what is the intention of
what's the
that,
intention now?
Or like
I think though that what is beautiful about the book is that you don't limit it to just sort of like what a white gaze thinks is authentic and then performing to that white gaze. You get into the confusing space that I think, like upwardly mobile people of color, and particularly I think Latinos right now are in, and you do that a lot through Anais, because like her family is more middle class, like she's like kind of from an upstate suburb, he goes to the house, they like make him sleep with the guests, like like it's like the whole thing. But like, and then that scene, that's why I was like really excited that you read that. You realize that she's been performing a little bit, and one of the things that I think I always, when I think about the Sellout, the difference is like, that's so pure satire. There's really no like heart to some extent, like and then there's not supposed to be. It's it's stylistic,
like straight up,
like it's genius. It's like it's not a criticism, but it's like here, like I feel like it dances on satire because that relationship is really real. And one of the things that I thought was like in a funny way, like twisted, is like, but I wanted you to talk about it. It's like, in some way, he's giving up this lie, right? Like he's like much more. They meet because there's sort of like a racist comment that like he kind of exploits in class, and she's like, "That was terrible," and like, and she's like this super like like about the people and all this stuff, and she's like, the community garden is in this chat, but really she wants to live in a nice renovated apartment building with a doorman. And because that's what she was from. How much did you see the relationship as sort of the commentary on like the way we all in some way perform for the person that we're like into or attracted to, like right?
I mean, Javi is like, he realizes that not only does this background have currency, like the academic world and the media world and everything, but like the girl that he's interested is more interested in him when he plays this thing up. So he leans into it, and I think that we do this in so many different ways, and I was trying to get at that in the book, like especially with social media now. Like we're just all kind of branding ourselves at every time, and like our backgrounds and wherever we come from, and and so I don't know, I wanted to try to get at that in every aspect of his life, and it was important to have that relationship in there, and also to give make a character like Anais like a full character too, because while she is contradictory, obviously, I think she does have good intentions, right? She is idealistic. She does want to change things, but also like, it's interesting to me when people want to change, like people will like protest and do all these things and be calling for these things, but then it's like, all right, well, we're going to put the kids from the hood in your school. And like, oh, wait a minute. Like you're like, whoa, let's not go that far.
Well, I think the thing that's so interesting about Anais is like, she sort of represents this idea of like, I theoretically stand for all these things, but I'm not actually comfortable with who I am.
Right.
And like, and then I think the apartment thing starts this kind of push comes to shove of like, we actually all are who we just are.
Right.
Like, right. And like, and you are not actually really comfortable with even a smaller version of the dude that you think you're with.
Yeah.
Even though he's also a liar. Right. Like, and that's this awesome gray area. So, okay. So then in college, there's this guy who's kind of hot for Anais.
Yes.
A grad student named Ricardo.
Yeah.
And I always think like we talk so much about women's intuition, but you do this amazing job with Ricardo where he just susses out the bullshit so fast. And I'm like, I don't know, talk about Ricardo and like, what is that male instinct where you're like, get out of here. Like you deal with masculinity in a really cool way in the book. like in a really cool, starting with the dad and Gio, and we'll talk about Gio, but Ricardo, to me, I was like, he's just like, get out of here.
Yeah, he was a fun character to write, and he's someone on campus who's like the main kind of activist campus in this like Latino little subsect of campus. And for him, I wanted him to sort of challenge Javi because, one, he doesn't think Javi's like doing things for the right reasons, but also because Javi's kind of like taking his spot, right? And he's like, so it's also kind of a game for him too. It's like yes, I do want to change things, but also like you're still in my shine, right? And like I'm supposed to be the one getting these things, not you. And it's something that I feel like I saw a lot of in places like Cornell, and also like in these very rarefied elite spaces. It's like we want to advocate for things, but also like I want to be the one to do it. Like, and get the awards and prestige.
Well, there's so much gatekeeping, right? Like it's like on the one hand, like I'm going to make a name for myself by complaining that there aren't enough Latinos in literature, but then I don't want to do anything to help other Latinos in literature.
Like, when they get there, it's like, whoa,
hold on. Exactly. And I thought on the one hand, like you captured that so well, but also like he just was such a great, like, I don't know, he's not quite a villain, but he's like, like he's sort of the weird cop, like circling the whole thing, like in this way. He's the narc of the whole thing, like in this funny way. So then you have Gio. And I guess I would think like Gio and his mom are probably the two most pure characters. Like, but Gio is watching like really closely. Talk about like how you conceived of Gio, and if you like how you see him and Javi in relation to each other.
Gio is actually probably my favorite character, to be honest. There was a point where I was writing this and I made Gio the main character for a while.
Oh, really?
It didn't work out, but he to me is like, he's somebody who's just kind of like living his life. He also was dealt a very bad hand, but he never, he did get that sort of sympathy and stuff that Javi got, but he didn't like, I'm going to run with this. He was just like, I'm going to just do my thing. And he just, to me, represents somebody who's like a grounding presence in Javi's life to pull him back into reality. He's not online. He's not like, he doesn't know the terms. He doesn't know like all these things. And he's just like living his life, trying to like get a job and move out and get an apartment.
And he's not afraid of like losing. Like he doesn't see
he does. He joins a gang, he sells drugs, he craps out, gets
but he's not afraid of like bucking up against Javi either.
Oh
like,
no, because he knows Javi.
Exactly.
He knows Javi from when Javi was a kid. He's like this writer person, and so like that was important to me to have, because I feel like obviously there's a satire, there's commentary and everything, but really I was trying to talk about the importance of having relationships outside of these like worlds, with just real people.
We were just talking about this. It's a good segue. Like we were talking backstage. Like I don't know. We were talking backstage about this and like how, one of the reasons why I love the book so much is like it's beautiful language. It's beautifully written. It's like really, really marvelously constructed, but it is like deeply readable. Like I've like told friends of mine that don't make a lot of time for fiction to read it. I've told friends of mine that are writers to read it. And we were just saying, like, one thing we share, it's something that I try to do with my writing. And like one thing that we share is like, we keep like readers and like social circles that are like out of the literary world, academia, all that, in the sense, like, I don't know, like, I think, who do you feel, people always ask me this, like, who do you feel you're writing for? Like, who's your kind of fake reader in your head, right?
Honestly, like my friends, like growing up, I would want them to open the book and be like, okay, that's Andrew. Like that's like how he thinks, so that's how he talks. You know what I mean? Like not use these like crazy words I would never use in conversation with them.
No, totally.
You know what I mean? So that to me is like I keep them in my mind, because I'm like, if they just read a random page, would they just look at me like, you don't use those words, bro? Like
no, right? Like where it's gotta feel like you're not embarrassed to have your boy from growing up like read this thing and be like, oh God, right? Like
And I try to write it at that level, but that's also how I think.
No, totally.
I went to school and learned these big words, and I kind of make fun of them in the book because sometimes they would annoy me because I didn't really understand what. Like I was like, are we? we trying to hide the message of these things? Like, why are we making it so complicated?
Yeah.
Like, who's this for?
I know, totally. Wait, so to go back to Gio and Ricardo a little bit, there was something about the dynamic of those three characters in particular that felt to me almost like comic book-esque in the way that they had like these sort of arcs, like like an arc villain and the arc, like sort of like the foil and all these things. I'm just curious about what you read and like what were the inspirations for the book? Like what stuff do you like to read? Like did you read, like I tend to read before I start a new project. Like, what did you read when you're like, I know what it's gonna be about, but like here, like what were you into? Or movies too, because like I think I watch a lot of movies before I do shit too. Like
like Paul Bettany was a huge inspiration, right? For the satirical elements and the humor. I think Junot Diaz was a huge inspiration in terms of the setting and the types of characters. Matt Johnson is another writer
I love Matt Johnson.
I feel like he's like the child of those two. Like he's
he is. He
can do the satire and he has real characters, but he also has a plot.
Did you ever read Hunting in Harlem?
Yes, I love that novel. And I told him, I was like, I think that's my favorite book.
I don't know. It's my favorite book of his. I read that before Olga, and it's like, I think it's out of print, and I don't know why it's out of print.
I don't know why.
It's amazing.
It's
I bought
amazing.
it. I had the original galley. Because like one of my girlfriends from growing up, like ended up becoming his book publicist, like on that book, and like so I had the original galley, and then I don't know, I lost it, but like I love that book so much.
I bought a copy on like eBay or something. It was like from the library. Like somebody stole it from the library and sold it. I was like,
it was me.
And I had him sign it. And I was like, bro, I'm sorry, but like it's the only one I find.
No, I finally confessed that I used to steal library books, and it's my greatest sin. I know.
They put my book in my high school library, and I was like, oh man, what if somebody steal it?
And I hope, but I'm like, that's like the greatest compliment, but also like, what nerd crimes, like, right?
Yeah, I know.
Like you're just like, I'm gonna go house this book. Like it's like totally like by just not returning it.
I have an Octavia Butler novel in my house, and from like the Miami-Dade library, and I'm like, they're gonna come bust my door down one day and just like get this never give it back.
My friend came over and she was like from high school, and she was like, you stole that copy of The Once and Future King from Murrow. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she pulled it off the shelf, and sure enough, it's like stamped like property of Edward R. Murrow High School, and I just never gave it back. So it wasn't just the library.
We're such thugs. We're such
I think like it's funny. I love all three of those like writers and books. Like I think it's just fantastic. Like and I hear it, I see it, but it's also totally fresh, right? Like,
thank you.
I know you like to keep things kind of ambiguous.
Sure, yeah.
Which I think is really good. But I did feel like you were making some really cool statements without being very heavy-handed at all about kind of masculinity. I don't know. Do you want to talk about how you thought through that?
Yeah,
and stuff?
It's something I think a lot about because I grew up in the Bronx. It's a very like hyper masculine place. Especially like in the realm of relationships and stuff, and like the music I would listen to, and I listened to it back, and I'm like, it's kind of messed up. Like what they're saying, totally. You know what I mean? But like I still like it because it's from my childhood. So it's like, fuck, and then so I don't know. Like I wanted to get at all that because I feel like it's important to discuss. I think a lot of men, my age can like be like, well, that's the real, I gotta stay there. And it's like, well, we could like that music, but like we gotta, push forward, right? And I have kids now, like I have a son, I'm gonna have to raise a son. So it's like, what am I gonna impart? Right. And so it's something I've thought about even before I have kids, but now even more so because and I have a daughter to raise. Like, what am I going to teach her? So it's like, I didn't necessarily have like answers, but I wanted to like explore where all that comes from and how it's difficult. We often will stumble in the act of like trying to repair ourselves, which and I think that's important to like understand too and like have that grace because like if you don't grow up with those kind of tools, it's hard to like to try to fix yourself, and adapt, and especially when like the goalposts in society are constantly like men can do this, men can do that, like they can't say this, they can't say that, and it's like, it's kind of confusing,
No, I think it's really confusing, and I don't know. I wish that there was a little bit more. I wish there was a little bit more space for men to talk about that, and it kind of one of the things that bums me out a little bit is like I think we've lost some male fiction readers to podcasts.
Yeah, there's a lot of podcast bros. Yeah.
There's a lot of podcast
Joe
bros.
Rogan took them all.
Yeah, that used to like read novels. Like I don't know, like right, like, and it's like I don't know, like I'm like what I hope there's something we can do to kind of get them back, because I felt like it was a great read as a woman, but like I thought there was so much in that way. Like the closer you get to that experience, the more that there kind of is there. But then you also write the women really well. Like talk about the mom.
Yeah, the mom.
Yeah, and how you also see her vis-a-vis Javi. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the mom is also a very important character. The mom is strong. She's been through way more than Javi, but also like she's focused on making sure that he's gonna like be okay, right? Like the basics kind of.
But I think she means that holistically.
Yeah.
Right? Like she wants his soul to be okay.
Right.
Right? Like it's not just like she wants him. That's what was so cool about her, is like she's not enticed by all these trappings, and yet he is.
Yeah,
right?
She wants him to like have a better life, right? Like that's what you want for your kids.
Yeah.
But also she's like, but you're acting weird. Like, what are you doing? This is not necessarily healthy for you either. So I don't know. She's another character who's like meant to ground him. I think like that he has these people around him that can like pull him back when he goes, like he just drinks way too much of like literary Twitter or whatever.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, in some funny way, even though the dad's addicted to the drug hustle, right? But he becomes addicted. I don't know what I'm trying to place what I think. Like sometimes, like he's addicted to like getting away with the lies, but then sometimes I think he becomes addicted to, like what I guess I would overly simplistically call like white approval.
Yeah.
Right. Like right. Like I don't. What do you like? I mean, I was an addict or like.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Like I was trying to draw a parallel to those two worlds, because it's like in a way you're selling this like drug, right?
Totally.
Like these clicks, these like this compelling angle that people are gonna like be interested in, right? And I think I wanted to show how Javi, he doesn't have his relationship with his father, but he can connect to his father in this way that so he's not just like doing this for attention. He's also like kind of subconsciously trying to connect with his dad and get approval from his dad.
Right, like getting over on
if my dad was here, he'd see, like, I could explain to him how good of a hustler I am. He's constantly trying to do that to various real life hustlers in his life, like other drug dealers. Like, but look, I'm also selling something.
Yeah,
it's just
that's
a little different.
It's just different. Yeah. No, I think that's so. That's so interesting. Like the dad is like you set the table with him, and then it's kind of this looming presence, right? Like it doesn't just change him.
Yeah, because I think as I would hope as a reader, it would make you understand him a little bit deeper.
Yeah,
like I wanted the reader to maybe get uncomfortable or maybe not like Javi by the end, but also like kind of get him, which
I think you totally get him. Like one of the reasons why I do think you root for him even at the end to some extent is. Then after sort of these same sort of systems, sort of like oh, this is going to be my last question, don't worry. Like they sort of like egg him on, so to speak. When there's egg on their face,
he's done.
He's done. He's done. Yeah. Do you think that when sort of there's misdeeds, big or small, like by kind of public figures or public intellectuals of color, like that there's a worse kind of canceling. There's like a canceling of canceling that happens.
I don't know. I don't know if it's worse, maybe.
Because he gets pretty much canceled, but it's not a spoiler. Yeah. This is a book that's like, no, I think like it's not so. I think you can see it coming. It sort of operates like, I'm sorry, no, I really don't. No, but it's like, what I was rewatching Uncut Gems.
Oh yeah, that's like, a good movie.
Like you're like, it starts out and you're like, this isn't going any place. Like you don't think there's gonna be a happy ending in a family vacation at the end of it.
He tells you in the first page.
Yeah. He tells you in the first page. So like, no, I think like, which I love. You go like Toni Morrison on it, which is great. But like, I just think like, do you think there is a kind of worse canceling or like?
I think that like, there's a rush to like celebrate this person, but also it's like when they come down, it's like, we got them now. Like they were never that real, or they were never that pure, because there's also like this weird thing that happens when you raise someone to that level where there's like they're this pure person who like speaks for all these people, and it's like, bro, they're just a person, like,
that's right, and you feel like you did such a part in championing them,
right? Yeah, you
then
have
it's
some
like
ownership.
the eggs on your face,
right,
and there's more
right.
like you're more visceral about taking them down, I think. Yeah, okay, we're gonna take audience questions, and I went a little long, sorry.
No, thank you.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Hi. Oh, hi.
Something that didn't make the book that I wish had made the book. I had this really fun scene at Orchard Beach in the Bronx that didn't make it. And I'm going to do it as a short story. So it's going to come out in the world in its own. But I really like that scene because I love Orchard Beach. And I was like, I wanted to memorialize it in the book in some way. So
I love that. I love Orchard Beach.
Yeah.
Hi, Chris.
I'm curious about, you said you started writing it about 10 years ago, right? And like the last 5 to 10 years, we've had such a, I feel like an increase in scammers and
Yeah.
articles about scammers.
Sure.
So I'm wondering if it was like revising the novel sort of under that media landscape.
Mhm.
And also, do you have a personal favorite grifter?
Yeah, no. So like those people like definitely helped, like I was like, maybe he's something like this, cause like it was rooted in the same sorts of ideas that he was having. Right. So yeah, I would say they definitely contributed. I was always fascinated with like Jason Blair at the New York Times.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I wanted to ask about him. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. And I actually read his memoir. I forget, you had asked me what I was reading, but I had skimmed a bit of his memoir just to get the sense of the tone, because he was trying to explain himself, and for those who don't know, he was like a star reporter at the New York Times, black reporter. He was championed because they don't have a lot of black reporters in the New York Times, and didn't then, they don't really now, but but anyway, he was somebody who was like a national reporter, and he started just making up stories, right? And making up quotes and all these things. And a lot of it, I think, he wrote in his memoir was the pressure to try to like fulfill this attention that he had gotten. And he got caught and was like publicly shamed and fired and all that. And so he was someone I was like really interested in, because I was kind of like, I bet he felt a lot of, like he probably didn't start out this way. He probably had the pressure of like living up to this ideal that he was placed on him, and then like, what does that do to you, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'd say he's probably my favorite grifter. Mm-hmm. He's probably my most, I think maybe the most sympathetic one. I think I understand, Yeah. Hey man.
Hi. Obviously, we're writing this for a long time, and I think spending time on social media, we've seen kind of the proliferation of a lot of the things that you talked about. Do you think that we'll ever reach like a ceiling or sort of cap in people? Like, I was on TikTok and I saw people kind of arguing, and immediately it was like, well, I'm autistic, and the other person was like, I'm autistic too.
Yeah. But I've been autistic for longer than you. Yeah.
Do you think there will be a point where people stop sort of using
I hope so.
as an excuse to like avoid accountability, or like, I would love to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I feel like we're maybe moving toward that. I think that like there's been a collective like, okay, like fine. So I don't know. I think with movies like American Fiction coming out too, Yellowface was a big novel last year. It was like a satire of the publishing industry. I just, it's been interesting because when I was writing this, I was like, I'm not sure how people are going to take this. Like I didn't know if it was going to sell or like if I was going to get canceled. I don't know. So like I wondered about it while I was writing. I was like, maybe this is the last thing I ever write. Who knows? But it's come out in this time when like I feel like a lot of people are having these conversations and thinking the same thing. They're like, all right, this is getting exhausting. And also I think for me, what's more important and what's more frustrating is that it like detracts from getting to places, to actual goals, and like politics wise, education wise, like actually accomplishing things. Because we just like, we'll just point fingers at each other, like you're saying, and like not actually focus on the bigger goals that we kind of all agree on, and that's one of the things that like always, I'm just like, if we just like put some bullshit aside, we could actually do some things, so I wish I could say it's going to happen. I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, another one. Yeah.
So which character would you say was most difficult to write, and how did you push through it or work that out?
Honestly, Javi was difficult because I think for a long time I was worried that people were gonna think he's me, right? And so I'm like, so I was like, well, if he's doing stuff bad, he's making up stories. Everyone think that I did that, right? And so I still just assume most people are gonna think that anyway, and I've just come to, I've just come to that understanding, and but I know he's not, and so when I let that go, though, that allowed me to like really lean into his interesting tendencies and character flaws, and just like push him a lot further, because I would kind of hold him back. I'm like, damn, but if he did that, they're gonna think, oh, you know. But if I'm just at peace that he's not me, I could make him do all types of wild shit and not feel the consequences. So that took a while to get there, because like Gio I knew was not me, and Aisa I knew, and Javi is obviously based on parts of me, but like I had to come to that understanding that like I know he's not me, even if other people may not, you know, believe me. So
I believe you. Oh, I think there's one last question there.
How has your writing process changed since you first started working on the novel?
I think the biggest thing that I learned, I used to try to like revise as I went along, right? So I'd write like 10 pages and then I'd go back and like, these 10 pages have to be perfect before I move on. But then I would do that and eventually finish a draft, and then I'd be like, oh, but the story doesn't make any sense, right? So I focused on like drilling down these pages as I was going, but not on the bigger picture things. And the book came together a lot quicker when I just started writing drafts all the way through, not looking back, and then sort of like when it's done, really take a look, like what am I trying to say here, and then start doing the revision stuff instead of as I was going along. There's some people who can do the other way, and you know, like Paul Betty I've talked to, like he actually does revise as he go, and it's worked out well for him. So I don't know, you know, if my way is the right way, but it definitely helped when I just like finished a draft and then took a look at it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you for coming.
Hi. All right. Well, thank you all for coming out tonight. And really quickly, there's actually Bronx Brewery beers in the back, so please take one. They actually have Andrew's cover on it too, which is so cool. Yeah. So please take one. They're right kind of, you'll see the box. Anyway, they're really, really cool. So again, thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you to everyone who asked questions. Thank you to Andrew for celebrating your book with us. And if you're still with us in the live stream, please buy a copy of Victim in the live stream description. Thank you. And for all of us still in person, as I said, beers in the back, and we have additional copies of the book available for purchase at the table where you checked in. Andrew will be signing and personalizing books at the alcove where my coworkers are pointing. Thank you, Alex. And then we ask that you gather all your personal belongings so our staff can pick up these chairs. And we also have copies of Anita de Monte Laughs Last and Olga Dice Dreaming, which are incredible. Please buy those as well. And thank you all for coming out tonight.
You did great. You did great.
You really did.
Great. Thank you.
Terrific. That was great.
Thank you so much.